Hello, world. Ijoma O'Neill is my name. I've reached a point in my life where I'm looking back and thinking to give back what I thought I should have had. All my life, I wish I had someone who talked to me, held my hands through the stages. I would have done better than I did right now. And so I think I owe it back to my younger self to have a conversation. And the Onpurpose podcast gives me that platform. While talking to my younger self, you're listening to our conversation. And I believe it can help you wherever you are in your 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s. I'm 52 right now. And I intend to talk this way as I get old. So the seasons will change. The conversations will get more intense. But I know that I've lived enough to give you certain nuggets that will help you in your life, building your faith, building your career, building a loving family, making you healthy, and also investing wisely. I hope that you follow us through this conversation on the Onpurpose podcast and it will be useful to you. God bless you. Hello, Ijoma O'Neill here again, and this is the Onpurpose podcast. I'm excited to be here with you again, and I have a very interesting thought on my mind. I hope that I bring it out exactly as I'm thinking about it. It's on leadership. And so in the next few episodes, I'll be discussing leadership. But I'd like to start first by talking about leadership as it relates to politics in our country, Nigeria. I believe that every useful citizen of this country should make their own contribution for the advancement of the country. And so I hope that this podcast makes that kind of contribution, particularly for education. So I'll be talking about politics, but I want you to disabuse your mind of anything partisan. I do not belong to any political party. I do not intend to. And this subject is not particularly aimed at any one politician. But I just want to reason with you as Nigerian concerning the subject of leadership and politics. The definition of leadership that is the most popular today, if you are somebody who's given to reading, is one made popular by the very renowned John C. Maxwell, a man who has devoted his life to the subject of leadership. He has researched, taught leadership at every level, from religious institution to Fortune 500 organizations. And he's written loads and loads of books, of which I know I've read conservatively 2/3 of everything he's written, and not just reading through. As a curious student of the subject of leadership, I have also challenged some of those ideas. And here is the definition he made popular. Leadership is influence. He didn't just stop at that. He says nothing more and nothing less. So by that audacious statement, he is saying, if it is not influence, it is not leadership. I agree absolutely with that, except for one tiny caveat. You see, influence can either be positive or negative. If somebody holds a gun to your head right now, for fear of losing your life, you're very likely going to do as he instructs. And everyone will agree that that person has influenced you, but whether that person has led you will be a different subject. So if you look at that, it begs the question, is leadership just influence, or leadership is a type of influence, which I would suggest the qualifier to be positive. I believe that leadership is positive influence. If I was talking to the people I lead in church, I'll use the word purposeful influence, because I believe that every purpose is positive. And when I'm talking about purpose in this sense, I'm not talking about the purpose generated by a man. I'm talking about God's purpose. So this is my own definition, an improvement on what I learned from John Maxwell. Leadership is positive influence. That says it all. And I say so because there are examples of negative influence in the world. If you go back to history, you'll see people who have influenced millions and millions of people, but they've done so to very bad ends. Take Adolf Hitler, for example. You can't write the world history without his name on it. But what he did was not a good thing. Annihilated about 6 million Jews in a gas chamber, did so many terrible things. That's popular, that's influence, but that's not leadership in my books. So I even consider it a sort of a paradox to talk about good or bad leadership, because for me, leadership is a good concept. It's a positive concept. So it is either leadership or it is not leadership. The biggest myth about the subject is the thought that position makes a person a leader. So we think if somebody occupies a position of authority that they are automatically leaders. So he is a father, therefore he's a leader. He is the manager, therefore he's a leader. Or he is the counselor, or the governor, or the president, therefore he's a leader. No. The positions themselves are imbued with authority. But whoever occupies that office, whether they lead or don't lead, is up to them. And it is defined by a special capacity. That capacity is the ability the person occupying that office has to bring about positive change in the lives of people and in situations around him. That ultimately is what leadership is. Now, I say this when I'm talking about politics. In politics, it's a different ballgame. Politics in my book is social negotiation for power. And I believe that every human person is politically inclined. Every one of us, whether we know it or not, whether we want to admit it or not. Every one of us is politically inclined, in that we would like in every situation to advance our share of influence, of power, so as to bring about freedom or to achieve our dreams and goals. No one likes less power. Everyone wants more power. This power I'm talking about may have nothing to do with the position you occupy, but we'd like to influence our children for good. We'd like to influence our parents for good. We'd like to influence our friends for good. So to do that, we are engaging knowingly or unknowingly in what I call politics, social negotiation for power. However, there are people whose profession it is to be politicians. These are people who occupy the structure of government positions. So these ones, we call them professional politicians. It goes beyond just social influence to influencing policies and the rest. And so when it comes to politics, the aim of politics is power. And that's not the aim of leadership. The aim of leadership is freedom. Leadership brings about better situation or a better person. But politics advances the share of power. And so it is important to make you understand this, that the person who wins an election is not always the better leader. No, I say it is the better politician that wins an election. You can be a great leader with all the virtues, character, and skills of leadership, and yet lose to someone who is a non-entity, quote and unquote, only because they are smarter at the game of politics than you. So being a better leader doesn't necessarily make you a better politician. That brings me to a statement made by Socrates many years ago Socrates, analyzing democracy, said the failure of democracy is that the people who vote are politically uneducated. The world government systems have tried so many forms of government. We've seen the failure of Marxism, socialism, and the rest. Now, government can be what you call monarchy. I think that's what we have experienced in the African continent for the longest of time, where you have power vested in one individual as the king, or the government can be vested in a few people that we call the aristocrats, or power can be vested in the general masses. So power can either be in one or in a few or in the majority. Abraham Lincoln made this saying popular: democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, showing that the power to choose who is at the helm of authority in governance is vested in the people, which means that the electioneering process should be the most sacred process or system to choosing the people in power, which reflects the will of the people. But the question is, though that is what it should be, is that exactly what we have experienced? Clear answer is no. If you observe this country, one thing you will notice is that every successive government gets worse than the previous. And it is understandable. Why is that so? Because every successive government continues on the personal ambition of the one who is in power, whose primary goal is not really leadership, but it's politics for personal gains. So let's backtrack a bit. I was having a conversation someday with someone, and I said to them that every country, every nation gets the government that they deserve. By that, I mean that the people who are our leaders in this country, you see me, I've used the word our leaders. I use it for understanding. The people who are in positions of authority, and I mean by these government positions of authority, they are an extension of who we are. They are the accurate representation of the average Nigerian. The president of this country and his executive, the cabinet of ministers, and those in the judiciary and those in the legislative arm of government, they are all citizens of Nigeria. They are true Nigerians. They are a reflection of the aggregate of our attributes as Nigerians. So if you want to understand Nigerian politics and how the current administration and the president, in my own instance, is the best, clearest, most accurate representation of the current Nigerian person, then you must understand a Nigerian. Who is a Nigerian? Two things I'd like to tell you about a Nigerian is this. Number one, an average Nigerian is a very resilient person. If a Nigerian is taken out of the shores of this country, they succeed everywhere. They do not just succeed, they become the best. They are restless. The Nigerian is somebody who's very, very, very ambitious. If you go outside the country and you meet Nigerians amongst other black people, the Nigerian usually takes the lead very, very naturally. The Nigerian believes that he is the best amongst others. The Nigerian does not believe that there is something he cannot do. The Nigerians work real hard to achieve their goals. However, while that is the good part of the Nigerian, one other thing we're known for is that the Nigerian does not respect process. The average Nigerian has no regard for process. A friend of mine at the airport outside this country was sharing with me, he was in Canada and he came late for his flight and they were asking him to take a particular route. And he knew that he was looking at the flight about to take off somewhere else. And he looked at the lady at the counter and something was telling him in his mind, why not reach her? What if you give her some money? You could actually be put on that flight. And said, immediately held himself back and said, this is not Nigeria. But why is that so? Why did it come to this guy naturally? That's who we are. For the vast majority of Nigerians, I know that you listening to me right now will say, I'm not like that. And that may be true. But the people who actually are willing not to cut corners, to be true to processes and principles, are what I would call the minority of the minority. They are almost going extinct, I dare say that. Very, very, very few. Very few. But mostly, an average Nigerian is ambitious, good, but he disregards process. And think about somebody who's ambitious and unwilling to work. And when I mean work now, not do the work to get what he wants to do, to follow the process. You would find, that that's our problem. Nigerians do not regard processes, and Nigerians are ambitious. Now, let me tie that to leadership. In leadership, the primary tool of leadership is vision. The primary tool of leadership is vision. Everything that is built was built because someone at first caught a vision, believed it was possible. The quality about vision is that every vision is futuristic, is long-term thinking, requires process, requires sacrifice. Hardest work need to be put in over a long period of time. For some people, those who laid the foundation never lived long enough to even see the benefit or the results. Now, you see that quality of leadership, the ability to envision a thing and work hard to get it, is just that thing that is missing in the culture that is called Nigeria. Nigeria is not just its people, it's a culture. And in this country, Nigeria, we do not think long term. The average Nigerian wants to know how to pass his exams without reading. The average Nigerian wants to know how to get that license by putting money on the table. The average Nigerian wants to know, they want the result, we don't want the process. No matter the grammar you speak to us at the counter, would ask you, what should I do to get this thing? That's what we would ask you. That is who we are. And those who are in government offices right now, who are in positions of power, as we call them politicians, they are just representation of who we are. So truly the agitation for the Nigerians who say they want a better country is only an agitation for them to get the opportunity into those offices as their turn to carry on the actual Nigerian attitude and behavior in the very, very, very office. So you see, that's why I said the present president of this country is the best lesson for this country. You know, jokingly, I said to someone that I want things to be more expensive in this country. I want the fuel price to rise up to 4,000 per liter. Why do I want that? I wonder if we have suffered enough to have a rethink of our way. Because the very people who are in the buying fuel at the fuel pump, buying things for this amount, complaining, are the same people who are gullible enough to still manipulate the system in favor of their candidate that they know in their conscience is not the right leader to steer this country in its proper position. So I say, kudos to the present administration. If there was an election actually carried out today, I'm not campaigning. I almost believe that the current people in power will still win their offices. Why? Because they understand the Nigerians. They understand that the problem with Nigeria is that he doesn't think long term, he does not respect process, and so everything he wants is now. So if you meet him today and pay his price today, which is only going to be something small compared to long-term loss, he's going to grab that and forget about tomorrow. So you see why, if this country is going to change, it has to be put on a different track, on a different trajectory, absolutely. And to do so is very difficult. This train has set off a long time. It has gathered momentum. It has a serious backing. It's running on high speed. To redirect it would require some serious confrontation. So, back to leadership. What then is leadership, and how does it apply to Nigerian politics? You see, if you ask an average Nigerian what the problem is in this country, they'll tell you it's our leaders, and I don't believe it's our leaders as a problem. I'll say it is leadership, not our leaders, not the people. It is the culture of leadership that is missing in the Nigerian life, which means if you get rid of the people in the executive positions of power and come down to local government and come down to our churches and come down to club leadership, come down to small group leadership, come down to the home, you would find the same disregard, disrespect, impatience for process to build systems. So I told the lady I was talking to that, you see, the Western world or the more developed nations, they get us in that country to do menial jobs so as to keep the economy running, but they don't want you to destroy their system that it took them centuries to build. They do everything to protect the system, but in our own case, the system is subject to individuals, and that is only possible because the average Nigerian will get patent anything, basically, for now, at the expense of the future. So, what am I challenging you to do? I'm saying if you dare to change this country, you don't need to run for any office. You need to start leading where you are, because the problem, which is leadership, is a problem that is not with the position, it's a problem with the people, their behavior, their culture. And you're going to meet serious opposition if you dare to do this. Just try to do the right thing in your family and see how many opposition you will get. Just try to insist on the processes and principles, or perhaps ensure that people follow the bylaws or constitution of your club, and see how much opposition you will meet there. Just try to call people back to the agreement that you all have to build something to protect the processes that will ensure quality control in production, and see the oppositions you'd have. And you'd get these oppositions from who? From the same people, Nigerians. The same Nigerians. We are generally people who don't think long term. And so it can be safe to say the Nigerians are not visionary. The Nigerians are ambitious. They want results without process. And if anything is going to change, you are going to begin to lead differently from where you are. So leadership is a capacity that can be developed. In the following series, I will talk more about the different aspects of leadership and how to build them. But for this series, I just wanted to talk about the Nigerian project to show us that we have in government offices people who are replicas of our behavior. And if we get into those offices, we will do even exactly what they are doing, and perhaps worse. And if we're going to bring about anything or any change, we who elect people into positions of authority must become a different type of people. To do so, we have to orient ourselves around spirit of leadership and think long-term, so that we can make short-term sacrifices for long-term gain. That's how far I can take here until the next episode. So God bless you. Bye.